Dispel Magic. Let's talk about it. There's been some confusion, I feel like, and potential controversy around that, but I wanted to go into what the spell actually does and how it works and try to dispel some of the, no pun intended, man, I do that all the time unintentionally, dispel some of the mystery behind it and what it can actually do, and then talk about what it can't actually do. If you want to see my thoughts and more on that, stay tuned. Thought maybe we could shed a little light on the subject, huh? Yeah? Not working for you? Oh well. What's going on, folks? Ted from Immersion here. And I recently made my video on Counterspell, and that was more of a direct counter to a video, but a lot of stuff had come up in either the comments, on the Twitter posts, and so on. And I just wanted to address some things about Dispel Magic, because I actually learned something about Dispel Magic myself during all of this craziness. So I thought we'll start with the spell, we'll go over to D&D Beyond, we'll look at it, and then we'll talk about what it actually is, what it does, and what it does not do. So here we go. Dispel Magic, 3rd level spell, 1 action, choose 1 creature, object, or magical effect within range. Fine. Here's the key part. Any spell, S-P-E-L-L, any spell of 3rd level or lower on the target ends. Not any magical effect, not any object, not any creature. Any spell of 3rd level or lower on the target ends. For each spell of 4th level or higher, make an ability check, and so on. So that works in a similar fashion to Counterspell. If it's a 4th level based effect, you need to cast a 4th level Dispel Magic to end it, or use a higher, or cast a lower level version and then make a roll, which is 10 plus the spell's level. If you succeed on that, then it ends. And obviously there are things like, say, bards, like a lore bard's kind of later on self-inspiration thing could work on it, or a bard's jack of all trades apply to this, and so on. Abjuration wizards, I believe, also get a bonus to this. But anyway, that's how that works. But my point is, it only works on spells, not creatures, not magic items, not other things like that. It only ends spells, folks. That is it. It's right there in the description, but if you need more clarification, let's go over to the Sage Advice Compendium. You remember me talking about this? This, if you don't know, is the entire document designed to clarify rules issues. So the way this works is, way back in the day, back in 2014, really, what you used to be able to do, which I had done on several occasions, was it used to be able to, you might even still be able to do this, write, like there was a website you could go to, and I used to write Wizards of the Coast questions about rules and send them an email, and then I would get my own personal response email answering things about the rules for 5th edition, which is wild to me that that even happened, and I'm sure most people didn't even know you could do that. And then over time, I should see if I still have any of those emails. Maybe I'll do another video on that in the future. But then they kind of came out with this Sage Advice Compendium. And this is not things that require really an errata in the book, because the words are in the book and they work fine. This is a document crafted by Jeremy Crawford and other folks on the rules team, the lead design rules team of D&D, and they put it out there to clarify questions. And the way things end up in the Sage Advice is enough questions were brought up about it that they needed to make a specific ruling on it. So let's talk about Dispel Magic. There's 2 questions right here in the document. Can you use Dispel Magic to dispel a magical effect like a vampire's charm ability or a druid's wild shape? Dispel Magic has a particular purpose. Here we go again. To break other spells and nothing else. It has no effect on a vampire's charm ability or any other magical effect that isn't a spell. It also does nothing to the properties of a magic item. It can, however, end a spell from a magic item or from another source. Spells, they're what Dispel Magic is about. When it says it can end a spell cast from a magic item, that means like if you have a magic item that lets you, say, cast, I don't know, Spirit Guardians, let's say, then you could end it, right? I would say like the Wand of Fireballs is a good example, but the Wand of Fireballs, Fireball's there and then it's gone, so that doesn't really count. For example, if you cast Dispel Magic on a Staff of Power, the spell fails to disrupt the staff's magical properties. And nope, doesn't work on magic items. But if the staff wielder casts Hold Monster from the staff itself, Dispel Magic can end that spell if it is cast on the target of Hold Monster. There are abilities and other spells that can end or suspend magical effects that aren't spells. For example, the Greater Restoration spell can end a charm effect of any sort on a target, such as a vampire's charm or a dryad's fate charm, and a paladin's aura of devotion can prevent and suspend such an effect. 3 of the most versatile spells for ending certain magical effects are Lesser Restoration, Greater Restoration, and Remove Curse. Again, not Dispel Magic. And the thing that I actually learned about Dispel Magic in doing this research myself is this section right here. Can you use Dispel Magic on creations of a spell like Animate Dead, or affect those creatures within an anti-magic field? Which is something, so to give you a little frame of reference, as you know, or may have learned over the course of the channel, Paladins are my favorite class in 5th edition. And part of the reason that I love them is the Find Steed spell gives you a companion that is very good. It's created for, it's significantly sturdier than a Find Familiar-based companion, and it has some benefits to it that makes it sort of better in ways than sort of Beast Companion from a base Beastmaster Ranger. But that being said, it's still like a creature that exists and can fight and do all sorts of other cool things. I always thought, because it was a creature created from a magical source, that it could be dispelled. So, like, I summon my horse, my bear, my dire wolf, whatever you summon, whether it's Find Steed or Find Greater Steed, and I always thought that an enemy could cast Dispel Magic on it, because I'd be like, oh, it's a horse created from magic. It will be dispelled, and then it goes away, and then you have to summon it again. And that's a really good way to shut down some of the powers of a paladin. Turns out, totally wrong. Let's read. Whenever you wonder whether a spell's effect can be dispelled or suspended, you need to answer one question. Is the spell's duration instantaneous? If the answer is yes, there's nothing to dispel or suspend. Let's read further. Here's why. The effects of an instantaneous spell are brought into being by magic, but the effects aren't sustained by magic. See Player's Handbook, page 203. We might have to go look that up just to confirm. The magic flares for a split second and then vanishes. For example, the instantaneous spell Animate Dead harnesses magical energy to turn a corpse or pile of bones into an undead creature. That necromantic magic is present for an instant and then it is gone. The resulting undead now exists without the magic's help. Casting Dispel Magic on the creature can't end its mockery of life, and the undead can wander into an anti-magic field with no adverse effect. Another example, Cure Wounds instantaneously restores hit points to a creature. Because the spell's duration is instantaneous, the restoration can't be later dispelled, and you don't suddenly lose hit points if you step into an anti-magic field, which is arguably the best argument for that. Because people are always thinking, well, it's instantaneous, it's here, but it's created by magic. But you are healed hit points by magic. If I cast Dispel Magic, it doesn't undo your hit points, which is, again, the best example, I think, to explain that away. In contrast, a spell like Conjure Woodland Beings has a non-instantaneous duration, which means its creatures can be ended by Dispel Magic, and they temporarily disappear within an anti-magic field. So, Conjure Woodland Beings, Conjure Elementals, things like that that have a creature that you summon into existence that exists on the plane until the spell ends or something like that, those can be dispelled. Something like a Spirit Guardians, like a spiritual weapon. Those are a magical effect that exists as a creation from a spell that can be ended with Dispel Magic. And then here's a couple more clarifications. Can you ready... I asked this myself at one point. Can you ready Dispel Magic to stop another source of magic from taking effect? As basically, like, say I'm a cleric and I have Dispel Magic, but I don't have Counterspell. Can I ready an action to cast Dispel Magic to shut something down beforehand? Because I was like, that could be a way to get around not having access to the Counterspell spell. Well, no. The easiest way to stop a spell is to cast Counterspell on it while it's being cast. If successful, Counterspell interrupts the other spell casting, and that spell fails to take effect. Counterspell works against any spell regardless of the spell's casting time or duration. With the ready action, Dispel Magic can be cast in response to another spell being cast, yet Dispel Magic can't substitute for Counterspell. The main reason is that Dispel Magic removes a spell that's already in effect, whether that target is a creature, an object, or some other phenomenon. Dispel Magic can't dispel something in advance. If a spell isn't already present on a target, Dispel Magic does nothing to that target. The best that a ready Dispel Magic can do is dispel a spell immediately after it has been cast to prevent it from having any harmful effect. So we'll use Spirit Guardians again as an example. I can ready an action to cast Dispel Magic on Spirit Guardians, assuming I have some kind of forethought that this person will cast Spirit Guardians or some sort of long lingering spell. They do so, it exists, I can then counter it, but it still came into effect, right? Like, I couldn't counterspell a fireball because it's instantaneous and it goes off. So, like, if they have something that goes off and maybe does some sort of damage, like maybe they summon a wall of fire along all of my enemies, or my allies, rather. All of my allies will take damage from the wall of fire. I could then dispel it so it doesn't persist, but it still comes into effect first before I end it. For example, on your turn, you could say something like this: I ready Dispel Magic, and if the High Priest casts a spell on anyone, I cast Dispel Magic on the target if the spell takes hold. If the High Priest then casts Hold Person on your companion who fails the saving throw against it, you could unleash your ready Dispel and end Hold Person, right? And then again, here's some more Dispel Magic questions. Can Dispel Magic end Glove of Invulnerability? Yes, Dispel Magic can dispel the barrier created by Glove of Invulnerability, but not any of the magical effects that are active inside the barrier. That makes sense. And if Dispel Magic targets this effect from Bless cast by a Cleric, does it remove the effects of all the targets? Dispel Magic ends a spell on one target. If it doesn't end the same spell on other targets. So I'm concentrating on a Bless on 3 other people, not myself. Now, I'm concentrating on the spell, but I am not the source of the magical effect. Or I am the source, but I don't have the effect, if that makes sense. So if I cast Bless on 3 allies, they could hit me with Dispel Magic, but that's not going to do anything because my allies are the ones that have the benefits of the spell. So they could cast it on Ally 1, and Ally 1 loses its Bless spell and any other temporary-based spells that are on them, but it doesn't end it on number 2 or number 3. Now, if I cast Bless on 2 of my allies and myself, they could end the effects of Bless on me, but I'm still concentrating on the spell on the other 2 people. So that's kind of how that works. So I thought I would go over that because these couple of questions that are easily searchable in the Sage Advice Compendium and really are explained in the spell itself that it only deals with spells, but I thought I would go a step further. Something else to consider is you choose an effect within range. You don't have to see it necessarily. Now, that doesn't mean that you can, in theory, it doesn't require you to see the target of the dispel, so you could try to dispel something that is invisible. You just have to guess where it is. So normally when you're making an attack against an invisible creature, let's say, usually your DM just gives you disadvantage on it, and if you succeed on the roll, then it's considered that you hit. So if you have a grid and you know there's an invisible creature, you could just basically be like, all right, I cast Dispel Magic on this spot, this square, right? And if you're right, then the spell ends. Now, maybe your DM will allow you some other things, like I'm gonna see if I can use the search action to see if I can see footprints or depressions in the sand or the dirt or something. Okay, so I think that they're right here. Someone could cast Dispel Magic on that spot, and if they are in fact in that location, it will end the invisibility that's on them. So something else to consider about Dispel Magic is it ends all effects on the target, but that's not like a huge deal because not every single, there's really only so many effects you can put on yourself at a time. Given the concentration mechanic of 5th edition, you can only really concentrate on one spell at a time. So you could, say, put Mage Armor on yourself. You could put Feeble Mind on yourself. Or not Feeble Mind, Mind Blank, rather. So you have like a good resistance to mental effects. You have a boosted armor. And then you can usually concentrate on one spell. So I don't know what it would be, but like you could in theory. I mean, here's another thing. If you want to take this much time to set yourself up for combat, then that's something to consider as well, right? So you could put on Mage Armor, you could put on Mind Blank, you could put on Mirror Image, and maybe you put on, I don't know, Haste, right? All of these spells are on you. Well, first of all, you should know, as a caster that has the ability to put that many spells on themselves, that other people have access to things like Dispel Magic. And you, as a caster yourself, may want to prepare Counterspell to counter that Dispel Magic. Everybody who can cast high-level spells, everybody who can cast spells, can cast Dispel Magic. With the exception of like racial traits and magic initiate. But if they get spellcasting based from a class at a certain level, they can cast Dispel Magic, which is something as a caster yourself you should be aware of. So again, prep Counterspell and try to stop the Dispel Magic from hitting you. Also, now here's another thing I should say as well. Dispel Magic, I didn't say it before, has a range of 120 feet. So they can be outside of your Counterspell range to hit you with Dispel Magic, which is also something you would know potentially as a caster who's loading up all these spells on themselves. And then some of those spells have downsides if they get ended on you, like haste, you lose a turn, and things like that. But yeah, I just wanted to bring attention to the fact that all it does is end spells. It says it in the description, and the reason that it says choose one creature, object, or magical effect within range is because things that magic can create are those. It could create a creature, a la conjure animals. It could create an effect, something like a bless spell. It might even create a temporary object, depending on what certain spells are. Like, I don't know, fabricate makes a permanent item. Again, it all comes down to that thing we talked about. Is it an instantaneous item? Is it something that persists over time? But it only ends spells. It's not going to end a trickery domain's invoke duplicity, right? It's not going to end an aura from a paladin. It's not going to end, I don't know, the spiritual, the ancestral guardians of that type of barbarian, right? It's not going to end those effects. It's only going to end spells and things brought about by spells, like we said, like bless, like hold person, like conjure spells, but not certain conjure spells, right? Like animate dead, find steed, find familiar. Those are all, and I'm just going to check it right now. We're going to go over here and I'm going to look up find familiar just to make sure that it can't be dispelled. If it's an instantaneous duration, then it is. Duration is instantaneous, so you can't dispel a find familiar. You can't dispend a find steed, an animate dead, a control, or create dead. There are a lot of things that can be done that get around Dispel Magic, so it's not something that will just end and destroy things. Now, in previous editions, yes, you could do a targeted Dispel, you could do an area Dispel, you could lessen magical effects like things, like magic items, you could temporarily shut them off. So if you're living in a world where you still play with 3.5 rules or still have those in your head, then yes, or Pathfinder, that's a thing. And obviously, I don't think it needs to be said here, but I'll say it anyway. You can play with whatever kind of rules you want at your own table, right? If you homebrew that Dispel Magic can shut down any magical effect, like it can knock a druid out of wild shape or, whatever else, or, it can shut off a magic item for a period of time, then that's something you can do at your table, but that's not how the spell works as written. It only ends spells. Like I said, if you have 6 spells applied to you all at the same time, it will end all 6 spells on you. And again, there are situations where other people can cast like haste and enlarge reduce and magic weapon and all these things on you, and you can cast your own spells and be some avatar of combat by having all of these things on you. But I feel like you should know one Dispel Magic will clear all of that off, so be mindful if you come across a caster, your whole big epic plan might just get shut down. But important to know that if you're riding on your Periton mount from Find Greater Steed, someone can't dispel it while you're in the air and drop you to the ground. They could blow it up and kill it, and then you fall to the ground, but they can't just dispel it away from underneath you. Something, again, that I learned in the process of making this video. So hopefully that clears things up for all of you. I did my best to try and touch on the different things that I've seen Dispel Magic brought up for. Again, in older editions, it used to do more things and could do more things. In 5th edition, all it does is end spells. And it ends a single effect, it ends you pick a location, and it will end all 3rd level spells on that. It's not an area dispel, right? It doesn't dispel everything in a 30-foot cube. It doesn't dispel anything in a cone. You choose a target, and the magic ends on that target, right? Not everything in a whole massive area. If we go back to the Conjure Woodland Beings, right? Spell Conjure Woodland has an non-instantaneous duration, which means its creation can be ended by spell magic, and they temporarily dispel. So, from the way I read that, that's the only thing that I guess is not clear to me, is if I summon 8 CR whatever creatures from Conjure Woodland Beings, if I cast Dispel Magic on one, I think it just ends it on that creature, not on everybody else. So, like, I'd have to cast multiple usages of Dispel Magic to disappear each one. And I don't think if I cast it on the caster, because they're only concentrating on the spell, they're not the effect. The effect is the creatures that are out there. If I get more clarification on that, I will let you know. But I think that's how it works, especially when we read that section on the Bless spell. If you cast Dispel Magic targets the magical effect from Bless cast by a cleric, it doesn't remove it from all of them, it removes it from one target, which makes me think that, again, multiple castings would be needed to remove each creature from a Conjure Woodland Being spell. So, anyway, I hope that helps to clarify things on that. I wasn't originally planning to make this video, but I saw the confusion and all the things going on with Counterspell, so I thought, since I did a little clarification on that, I clarified Dispel Magic as well. So, thank you all so much for watching. A big shout out to my patrons over on Patreon. Thank you for helping to support the channel. We broke 50 patrons, so we are going to be bringing back It Builds Character, a show where I build pop culture characters live on the internet on my Twitch channel with all of you to help me tell me what I'm getting wrong or what else I should do. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel, the numbers are continuing to grow, and we're hopefully on track to hit that 50,000 subscribers by my birthday in July. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.